Hey y'all, I'm not Afton G Kier. Not anymore. So, let's talk about it. I have been making YouTube videos for exactly 3 years, to the day, and in that time a lot has changed. The videos I've made have changed, the production quality has changed, hopefully for the better, and I've changed. I'm not the same person I was 3 years ago, but in this quick-moving age, how many of us are? Before I go any further, I want to make one thing absolutely clear. I am not quitting YouTube. At the very least, not yet. I'll probably quit someday, but that's not in the cards right now. This is not a goodbye video, just a video telling you about a change and what you can expect to see after it. So if I'm not leaving, what's changing? Well, as you probably noticed when you clicked on this video in your feed, or hopefully your subscription box, this channel's got a new name. This isn't Afton G Kier anymore, and neither am I. So let's try that intro one more time. Why are we so afraid of change? What is it about the idea of things being altered that puts us off? Are we afraid that we won't be able to go back? Or that the change will make things worse? Maybe we're just afraid of not knowing. The unknown is humanity's oldest and deepest fear after all, if father of the cosmic horror genre H.P. Lovecraft is to be believed. He may not have been right about much, but I think he hit the nail on the head with that one. We are afraid of what we don't know, and change almost always brings the unknown. My name is Malachi Ward, and welcome to the Final Phantasmagory. Was that suitably dramatic? Oh, I hope so. Don't worry, they won't all be that intense, nor will they all make references to infamous racists, I hope. Anyways, about that change. Why'd I do it? Well, I wanted to make a new identity for the channel, something that felt like it had a bit more direction. Going in, I wanted this to be a variety channel, but that goal is so easy to lose sight of. Variety is just too wide of a scope, so I narrowed it. I started making more specific videos, and I've realized that that wasn't the answer either. Hell, it's been 7 months since I made a video that wasn't related to the Magnus Archives. I love TMA, but that's way too narrow. I found that neither of them really worked for me, so this is my attempt to find a happy medium. But that's only part of it, because I also needed to change my channel's look. As I've learned what my channel is and what I enjoy making, I've realized that I want a more cohesive aesthetic that fits my brand. My old assets didn't exactly scream horror YouTuber, and my art has improved enough that I wanted to give it another shot. There were hints of me in the old pieces, sure, but I've changed since then, and my brand needs to change with me. The name is just another part of that. The third reason is a little more abstract, but I think it's just as important. I feel like I can do better. I had Afton G Kier as an alternate name for years before I used it on YouTube. As I like to remind people, I've been wearing Afton since before good old Scotty C decided to use it for his mascot horror franchise and ruin it forever. That's another great bonus, by the way. I've finally escaped the FNAF jokes. Anyways, I made this name when I was an actual child. It served me well over the years, but I think my slightly more developed brain can come up with something better than that. Call it hubris, call it whatever you want. All I know is I felt a change was necessary, and honestly, that's as good a reason as any. Claiming I can be better and being better aren't the same, though. I don't just want y'all to blindly trust me that this change is for the better, I want to show you just how much better it is. Let's start with Malachi Ward, since that one's a little bit easier to explain. I actually went through a pretty agonizing process to get to this final result, but I'm really happy with how it turned out in the end. The first thing I did was come up with a decent list of first names and last names that I could use. I was between a few options for first names, but the ones that stood out to me the most were those with a biblical feel. There's something about the sound of names like Asher or Ezekiel that just carries a distinct weight and age. There's an intensity to them that I really love. Also, you generally have more syllables with them, which makes nicknames easier. I eventually settled on Malachi, although it took a while for me to pin down a spelling I liked. The name's meaning deals directly with messengers, which is sort of what I do here, and that strong mal at the start gives the name a bit of a darker tone that I think is fitting for someone who talks about horror, even if the etymology itself isn't directly connected. The nickname Kai is also so much fun, if for no other reason than being able to say Kai tries. The only real downside compared to Afton is its alphabetical placement. Malachi falls roughly in the middle of the pack, which means that it won't be the first name that pops up when looking at subscriptions in alphabetical order, in the same way that Afton was. Still, I think the many benefits of Kai vastly outweigh a bit of alphabetical assurance. Last names were a lot trickier, and I'll admit that I struggled a bit to figure out which one I wanted to use. I still had a list, of course, but they didn't really jump out to me in the same way that the first names did. A few highlights are Delapore, named after a fictional family of cannibals, Laplace, which is drawn from a philosophical thought experiment about determinism, and Hawthorne, for who else but Nathaniel Hawthorne. I also want to call out Iglesias and Garcia as frontrunners because they could have helped to highlight my Hispanic heritage, something I'm quite proud of and still a little disappointed I couldn't fit anywhere. In the end, the name that won out was kind of a dark horse, but I'm really happy that it got brought to my attention. I asked a couple people I know what name I should pick, and both Heavenly BB, who you might know from Twitter, and Nola Nocturnus, who streams on Twitch, really liked the last name Ward. I'd put it down on the list because I liked its simple yet deep etymology related to watching or guarding with undertones of hospitals and asylums, but I hadn't really thought about how much it worked with the other names. One of the reasons I felt like the other surnames didn't match, I realized, was because they were too long. I'd picked first names with a lot of syllables, so having a last name with a lot of syllables also felt confusing. It's part of why Asher Iglesias was my frontrunner for a while, since it got rid of that long first name entirely. Word got around that issue from the other end by being short, sweet, and to the point. In fact, I wound up liking the combination of that long name Malachi with the short name Ward so much that I stuck with it. Thanks for the suggestions, y'all. The final phantasmagory is a little more complicated, and definitely took me longer to settle on. Interestingly, FF has, in some form or another, been around almost as long as the idea of a rebrand itself, but its three parts were actually established in reverse order. Phantasmagory, or in earlier versions Phantasmagoria, has been a part of it since the start, since there's a lot of meaning crammed into that one word. I originally got the idea from my personal favorite word, phantasmagoric, which is a fancy way of saying dreamlike or confusing. Specifically, it can be used to refer to images that constantly shift, like those not quite moving optical illusions or that one famous picture where nobody can name a single object. After doing a bit of digging, I discovered that the word was actually a variant of another word, phantasmagoria, which has an even more storied history. Obviously, it shares an etymology with words like phantasm or fantasy, all of which are derived from phantazein, a Greek word I am definitely butchering, which means to present to the mind, according to Merriam-Webster. Phantasm and phantasmagoria, then, are derived from the French word fantasme, but phantasmagoria took a bit of a longer path to get there. You see, phantasmagoria didn't go through Middle English like phantasm, but directly hopped over in the late 1700s from the French word phantasmagorie. Now you're seeing it. But wait, why did phantasmagorie take so long to appear in the etymological record, you might ask? And to that, I respond that phantasmagorie didn't exist because the phantasmagorie didn't exist. A phantasmagorie was actually a kind of performance, a theatrical act put on to convince onlookers of the existence of the supernatural. Phantasmagories would use magic lanterns, a sort of early projector, to create images that would horrify and wow the audience, almost like something out of a dream. While English took the word and ran with it, the French always kept a connection between the phantasmagoric, dreamlike imagery, and shadow projection, which is what led to one very important 1908 film, La Phantasmagoria, the film, which is probably the first thing that comes up on YouTube when you search for my new name, was a very short animation, less than 2 minutes in total length. What it didn't have in duration, though, it made up for in utter incomprehensibility, filled with morphing and shifting shapes that became various comedic vignettes as the animation goes on. Occasionally, the hands of the animators will appear to act as omnipotent gods, forming new characters or piecing the vanquished back together. All in all, it's a really curious watch, but this piece is famous in animation history for being considered by many to be the first cartoon. So, to tie everything back together, the word phantasmagory has significance in art history and horror history, as well as being just the best kind of rabbit hole. It may not be the most SEO-friendly term, but I hope you can see why I had to include it in my name. Final is, unfortunately, a lot less interesting. Really, I just needed a punchy word, and the alliteration sounds nice, but there was some amount of thought put into it. For one, while I started out with Final, at some point I got the name wrong and started using Forgotten in a lot of my tests. I like them both, with Final clearly indicating a sense of significance, while Forgotten ties into the whole slow decay aesthetic that appears in my channel artwork, but it ultimately came back to the same reason I chose Ward: syllable balance. Final is short, Phantasmagory is long. I think it just sounds a lot better. Ironically, the hardest part of the FF name to settle on was the article directly preceding it. Should it be a Final Phantasmagory or the Final Phantasmagory? The Final Phantasmagory definitely boosts that significance factor and makes it seem more grand, but it loses out on the alphabetized subscription page boost of a Final Phantasmagory. A Final Phantasmagory also probably makes more logical sense, since there are a lot of videos on the channel, not just one. As you can tell, the wound up winning in the end, but it was a really close race, and I'm still not totally sure that I made the right call. You'll notice that my actual handle, at Final Phantasmagory, includes no article, and that's because I think there's a non-zero chance I might still change to A. That's how on the fence I am about this. I'm really curious. What do y'all think? Feel free to tell me in the comments down below, because this is one spot where I am really, truly not sure. There's a lot more to talk about, like what the future of this channel is going to look like, what secrets the channel art might hold, and even what I'm working on next, but you won't hear any of that stuff here. All of that is going to be in part 2, which should now be live on my second channel, Malachi Ward. To make it even easier for y'all, there should now be a link on screen. Hopefully, this isn't goodnight, YouTube people.